Have you ever felt that the person you show to the world is just a performance, one you can't keep up anymore? Like the image everyone expects from you is cracking, and somewhere deep within, a quiet whisper says, "Good." But what if that collapse isn't your end at all? What if it's the start of something far more real, something your nervous system has longed for, something your soul secretly planned all along? You see, there's a truth most people never talk about. Your ego wasn't built for joy. It was built for survival. That's why when it starts to crumble, it feels terrifying, yet somehow freeing. Almost like taking your first full breath after years of holding it in. But what actually happens after that? What takes place inside your brain and consciousness when the ego dissolves? And why did Carl Jung, decades before modern neuroscience, describe this exact process with such precision? Stay here till the end, because in this video, you'll understand not only what ego death does to your brain, but why it might be the very medicine your mental health has been craving, and why the part of you that resists it is also the part that secretly longs for it. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe to my channel, SYC Soul, hit the bell icon, and like this video so you don't miss the upcoming insights that might just shift how you see yourself forever. Now, we hear ego everywhere. He's got a big ego. Let go of your ego. But what does it actually mean? In psychology, your ego is the identity you've built to survive in the world, the I you believe yourself to be. It's a collection of stories, roles, labels, and social masks. Most of them were programmed without your permission. Carl Jung called this outer shell the persona, the face we wear for the world. And behind that mask lies the shadow, all the parts of you you've buried just to be accepted, loved, or safe. But your ego clings to that mask like it's life itself, because to it, it truly is. Here's where things start to get fascinating. According to fMRI studies on meditation and psychedelics published in journals like Nature and Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, when people report ego dissolution, something measurable shifts in the brain. When that measurable shift happens, something remarkable unfolds. Activity in the default mode network, the part of your brain that keeps narrating, me, my story, my problems, drops dramatically. It's the same network that's often overactive in people struggling with anxiety or depression. It's the inner voice whispering, "You're not good enough," or worrying, "What if they don't like me?" It's the mental loop that says, "Keep it together, don't let them see." So when this network quiets down through deep meditation, breathwork, psychedelics, or even an unexpected spiritual crisis, your brain begins to do something astonishing. It's not only a psychological experience, it's a biological one. That unraveling you feel isn't madness. It's reorganization. Your mind equates identity with safety, so when the familiar mask starts to fall, the nervous system panics. It feels like dying, but it's not death, it's transformation. The death of the false self. And then comes the mystery Carl Jung hinted at decades ago. He said that beyond the persona and the shadow lies the greater self, the part of you that isn't bound by roles or fears. Modern neuroscience is now catching up to what Jung could only describe in symbolic language. After ego death, the brain doesn't collapse. It resets, the chatter softens, and something ancient, silent, and whole begins to surface. Many describe it as peace, clarity, or boundless awareness. Could it be that what you truly are isn't the voice in your head, but the awareness listening to it? Neuroscientists studying this state noticed that when the default mode network goes quiet, other brain regions start lighting up. Connections appear between areas that normally never communicate. It's as though an orchestra that once played one rigid tune suddenly begins to improvise freely, every instrument in harmony with the next. That's why so many people report profound calm, creativity, and joy after ego dissolution. The brain is literally rewiring itself to a freer rhythm. And here's something curious. I'd love to know from you. Are you connecting with what we're exploring so far? Tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and if this makes sense to your own experience. Your reflections actually help shape what comes next, because we're about to explore what happens after the ego dissolves. Does the brain stay rewired forever? Can this mysterious death actually heal trauma? And how did Carl Jung foresee this rebirth long before the first brain scan ever proved it? Keep listening, because the next part reveals why losing yourself might be the only way to truly find yourself. So the ego dissolves, and what rises from its ashes might surprise you. After that internal earthquake, when your mind's narrator finally falls silent, something deeper begins to awaken. It's that sacred stillness many call peace, but it's not empty, it's alive. Neuroscience confirms what Carl Jung sensed long ago. When the ego's control loosens, your brain doesn't shatter, it starts healing. In this state, neural connectivity across regions of the brain dramatically increases. Researchers at Imperial College London describe it as entropic brain activity, meaning your brain begins to form new, fluid connections that don't usually happen. Imagine instruments in an orchestra suddenly improvising together for the first time, creating harmonies no composer ever wrote. In this freedom, your sense of self becomes softer, more spacious. You start realizing, maybe you are not just your thoughts, not your name, not your history, but the awareness behind all of it. Studies published in Frontiers in Psychology have even shown that the stronger the experience of ego dissolution, the greater the long-term reduction in anxiety and depression. It's as if the mind receives a full reboot. Carl Jung described this rebirth as a confrontation with the self, the higher, wiser part of your psyche that the ego's fear has long hidden. But this transformation isn't just mystical poetry. There are real biological changes happening. Research on long-term meditators and psilocybin therapy shows an increase in activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for empathy, self-awareness, and emotional balance. At the same time, activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, decreases. The result? A calmer, more reflective mind that no longer reacts impulsively, but responds consciously. You begin to step out of the loops of, "I'm not enough," or "they'll judge me." You start living in the present, in what is not in what your mind imagines. But here comes the question that turns even deeper. If the ego dissolves, what's left of you? Who are you without your stories, your achievements, or your pain? This is where Carl Jung's insight becomes vital. He warned that dismantling the ego without rebuilding it could be dangerous, as risky as never questioning it at all. Integration, he said, is essential. So how do you rebuild your identity after it falls apart? Not from trauma or fear, but from truth. How do you live as something larger than the old you, yet still function in the world? Stay close, because in the next part, we uncover Jung's map of rebirth. Individuation, the process that turns ego death into awakening. So, after the ego dies, what happens next? Carl Jung called this next stage individuation, the process through which you become who you truly are. Not the mask, not the shadow, but the total self, whole, integrated, conscious. It's not about destroying the ego forever. Jung never told us to erase it. Instead, he taught that the ego must learn its rightful place as a servant to the self, not its master. The ego is the tool, not the king. During individuation, the fragments of your personality begin to realign. The parts you rejected, your fears, shame, hidden desires, unspoken talents, all start knocking on your inner door, asking to be seen. And this is where most people turn back, because it's easier to chase distractions than to face your own reflection. But Jung warned, what you resist persists, meaning the pieces you avoid don't disappear. They grow stronger in the dark. They appear as anxiety, relationship struggles, or even recurring patterns you can't explain. When you dare to face them, though, something sacred begins. You stop running, you stop fighting, and slowly, you begin to feel your inner world reorganize itself. Ego death isn't the final collapse, it's the opening of a new order. Jung compared it to alchemy, the transformation of base metal into gold. The raw material of your pain becomes the substance of wisdom. Here's something truly fascinating. Neuroscience supports this symbolic transformation. Studies on long-term practitioners of mindfulness and trauma therapy reveal structural changes in the brain's hippocampus, the region linked with memory and emotional regulation. Healing old pain literally reshapes your brain's pathways. So, individuation is not a theory. It's the deepest biological and spiritual evolution a person can experience. And it begins the moment you stop trying to be who the world wants you to be and start remembering who you already are beneath it all. By this stage, people often report a profound sense of inner clarity. The external world doesn't change, you do. The same situations, same faces, yet something in you no longer reacts, it only observes. Can you feel that shift even while listening? That calm curiosity that rises when you no longer need to prove anything? That's a glimpse of your true self. And before we move to the final part, tell me in the comments, are you beginning to sense what Jung meant by the awakening of the self? I'd love to know where you're watching this from, and what part of this process feels most real to you. Because next, we'll explore how to live from this awareness, how to carry this transformation into daily life, relationships, and purpose. Stay with me. The final part reveals how to walk in the world after awakening. So now, you've seen what happens when the ego collapses, and how, through individuation, the true self begins to rise. But what does life look like after that awakening? How do you move through the world when the old you is gone, but the new you hasn't yet found words? Carl Jung described this state as living the symbol. It's when awareness no longer comes from thought, but from direct experience, where intuition becomes your natural guide. You don't live from reaction anymore. You live from alignment. People who've gone through ego dissolution often say life feels simpler, yet more meaningful. Colors appear brighter. Time slows down. Conversations become deeper, and silence becomes sacred. It's as if the world hasn't changed, only your way of seeing it has. But here's something Jung insisted on. Awakening is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of responsibility. Because once you see through illusion, you can no longer pretend you don't. Integration means bringing this awareness into your relationships, work, and purpose. Not escaping life, but embodying life more fully than ever. That's why Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. He didn't mean some mystical being floating above problems. He meant a human, real, grounded, whole, yet awake. And modern psychology supports this. Research on long-term meditators and post-ego transformation therapy shows significant increases in emotional intelligence, empathy, and adaptability. People become more compassionate, not because they're trying to be, but because there's no wall between me and you anymore. When the illusion of separation fades, the heart naturally opens. You stop defending an image. You start living the truth. So maybe ego death isn't death at all. Maybe it's a return to the simplicity of being, to the stillness that was always there beneath the noise. If this journey connected with you, if Jung's vision and science together helped you see something in yourself, then I invite you to continue walking this path with me. Subscribe to SYC Soul, like this video, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next exploration into the mind, the unseen, and the soul. And share this with someone who's standing on the edge of their own transformation. Maybe this is the light they've been searching for. Because the truth is, the death of the ego is not an ending. It's the moment your real life finally begins.